Okay, Bismillah. Hi guys, Assalamu alaikum. Today I'm going to be speaking to you, just flaunting my, I wouldn't say premature. I know quite a bit about Gustave Courbet because he's one of my most awesomely inspirational artists. And in honor of him, I'm even wearing a very Courbet-esque hijab, which would be something rustic, something um, like very refined and romantic, realist-ish. I don't know, something royal because he was so plush and luxurious. Well, he was very romantic looking, I guess. Yeah, by that I mean he was very bohemian. He was established as a radical thinker, and he was, fighting against the elite, and um, he was a radical thinker, also fighting against poverty to establish himself as a self-taught artist. And the reason I love Courbet is because he wrote at a time where, I mean, it's common now, like from Lady Gaga to uh, Jeff Koons or Tracy Emin, who I did a video about before. Every modern artist basically draws their inspiration from their work, but the person that started that all off was Gustave Courbet, who uh, started off the trend to draw inspiration from the artist's life, and changed. He basically did it in Paris, which was the heart of the establishment of the arts back then. So he literally changed the game forever. And people that I would compare him to now would be people that in like the underground artistry. Nowadays, music is the established genre that changes people's perceptions about politics and life. So people like Immortal Technique or Carla, I'd liken to Gustave Courbet, and even like hippies like David Wood, who I work with in Power Network, I'd liken him a lot to Gustave Courbet as well. Other attraction marketers, people like that, and I'll point out why as I go through. So let's talk about Courbet. If I show you my screen so you can see some of his awesome paintings, you'll know exactly why I think he's so amazing. Now, Courbet was special in the sense that he did stuff nobody had ever done before. And by that I mean, you can probably see that. This here, the man with the awesome tall beard, cocking his head back and looking at these two people bowing their heads to him, is the artist, Gustave, and these two are meant to be the patrons. And you might be thinking, well, this looks like a really typical scene, like what's so special about this? But really, if you knew a bit of history about painting and the Romantics back in the day, this was something pretty awesome for the time. Like Gustave Courbet was the first guy to start painting. Was the first guy that was basically started painting pictures of peasants, and by that I mean he started painting pictures of everyday people, whereas before this, mostly paintings, especially of the size that he did them at, were mostly about the church and about rich people from history. So nobody painted with, and especially his technique. What I really love about him is that he was really like just really, rough with his, very frank and very confident. He was a very opinionated and cocky character. You saw that in his posture, like in a lot of his paintings, like he's looking like, yeah, what do you want? Those kind of selfies. But they were called self-portraits back then. But it's just funny, you should look at his self-portraits. But his painting style was very similar as well, and he was so confident because he basically, and we'll discuss how he became so confident in his work, what you as an artist can do to build your techniques as well. But he would basically, he was known to move his brushstrokes and be very frank. Nobody had ever painted so frank, in such frank brushstrokes, some of his friends would say. And his palette knife would always move very fast with surprising agility. And he even used like anything, like, and he'd use his fingers. And that actually made me think of the way I like to paint as well, because once in first year, when I was in architecture school, I had to do a painting of a ridiculous project that I was doing. And I say ridiculous because well, maybe that's a story for another time, but I didn't have a paintbrush, but I could see what it was that I wanted to see, and I knew the texture that I wanted to capture. So I literally just got my finger and started doing it, and all the colors that I needed, and it looked exactly like it needed to look like, to the point where people would come over to me and be like, well, how did you do that? And I said, just use my finger. So sometimes, when you have the vision that you want for the overall piece, you don't literally use anything, shoes, fingers, glass, whatever. It can really, it's just about fulfilling the vision that you have in your head. And he was actually really, again, he was really anti-establishment like this, because like artists to be painting with their fingers back in the day, that would just be considered ridiculous. But what you'll notice as I tell you more about his work is that he really, really believed in doing his own thing, and he didn't let anyone tell him how to do his own thing, which is why I love him so much. Like, he really was master of his own destiny. So he was he never he was known to say that I never will paint a hair's breadth away from my principles, especially not just for the sake of money. So he never did anything that defied his own principles, and he was a really political artist, which is why people loved his work. He was the founder of Realism, so he painted things really realistically, and he thought anything abstract, anything like not real, basically wasn't a painting. So that was quite a traumatic statement for him to make for some people. And he basically was he really was someone that, again, like Tracy Emin, he was somebody that was a marketer. He funny thing about Courbet is, if you've looked at his paintings, you'll probably think, wow, this guy's like he's such a romantic figure. He rose from the ashes of nothing, a peasant with the beard. That's really what he looks like in his paintings. If you take a look again at the work that I showed you like 2 seconds ago, which is called Bonjour, Monsieur Courbet, he really, look at the background, look at the surroundings. He really looks like a peasant, like somebody that's very rustic, a hiker. He'd kind of be like one of those backpackers from SOAS today. So, and that's a really funny analogy, actually, which is in London, that's the School of African and Oriental Sciences, because most of, like Courbet, he actually came from a very rich family. He came from the bourgeois. He came from the establishment, but he made his thing out of basically being completely anti-establishment, which is funny because that's where he got all of his own funding from. But he was such a good such a good marketer. He recognized the importance of image. Like, he knew most Parisians in Paris at the time were really attracted to and were entertained by stories of like drunken romantic bohemians that kind of rose out of poverty and had this truth about them, had this rawness about them, and then became, these mysterious figures of awesomeness because of their talent. And to this day, those kind of stories are famous. Like, if you think of people like Dave Wood or Immortal Technique, whatever, whoever you think about, they are people that have come out of, they talk about how hard they used to have it and how awesome they are now. But that's attraction marketing, and those stories are very carefully crafted. And Courbet was somebody who knew the art of marketing, self-marketing, and he really created a persona of himself. Until he was about 27, all he was doing was crafting, the kind of person he was to the public eye. And he did that through his painting. Like, the reason why he was so successful is because he was the master of his own image. And the other thing he used to tell people was that he's completely self-taught. Not strictly true, because he knew how to paint. He actually worked for some really established artists. He had money from his father, who was like this rich, self-made business guy, to go visit the Louvre and study in different galleries and take his time to spend hours and hours copying paintings by artists like Titian and Rembrandt and Caravaggio. Like, these were all people that inspired him a lot, and you can see that in his work. And Velasquez, he copied paintings by people that were really, 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 really talented, and that's how he became good. He spent hours copying the best paintings by all these classical masters. And if that's what you want to do, then I suggest that you go ahead and do the same thing. But the reason why he was sort of right in his claim that he's self-taught is that he never went into an established teaching route. Like, he didn't decide from start to finish, like, I'm going to go to this school, do this degree, and I'm just going to follow it through all the way to the end, and that's all I'm going to do to get my piece of paper and call myself an artist. He decided, no, it's more about the skill that I have, the kind of work that I develop. And he decided who his teachers were going to be. He decided what school to go to, how long he'd spend there, and he'd dip and dive into different institutions to get what he wanted and leave. So in that sense, he was self-taught. He was the master of his own education, which is what I love about him. Like, that's also how I think you should be educating yourself and your kids. So the awesome thing about him was, because he was such a strong personality, he was a landmark figure in 19th century art, and he was the one that first told artists that you should make the arts about the here and now. And before that, in Paris, it was all about history, it was all about kings, it was all about monarch, it was all about the Bible. That's all paintings were about. But he was like, no, it's about you and your experience as a lived artist. So, and don't just make it like minor, make it huge. So he used to make paintings that would fill like a whole wall in like a mansion. That's how important he thought the artist's experience was. So he really was like a striver for independence, and he was he was not only was he so super talented, like his paintings are incredibly beautiful, but he was also like super independent. Like, I am the artist and it's my work. He wasn't the sellout figure like Jeff Koons, like making, and Damien Hirst, like doing butterfly tattoos and dog balloons and making money out of that kind of like what. I mean, those guys. They might be, they might be saying it's about the artist's experience, but again, like, how far removed is that from the experience of what's happening in the world at large, or even the societies that they're in? A dog balloon and butterfly tattoos. Like, seriously, who are you even addressing with that stuff? And it doesn't make sense. But he really, what he did was, it was pretty epic. Like, for example, one of his most popular and famous paintings, I'll show you. The reason why it caused such a scandal, this is really, really cool. It's the burial at Orleans. The burial at Ornon, and that is the hometown where he's from. You probably have seen this painting before if you know anything about art history. But the reason why this painting was so famous was because everybody called it really ugly at the time, and they were really disappointed by it. But it became a huge hit with the ordinary people of Paris, and especially because it was done in his hometown, and it was humongous in scale. When the people that lived in his hometown realized he was doing this painting, they actually came up to him and begged him to include them in the painting. And those people that did ask him, he actually made them life-size. Now, that was a grandiose scale for anything like this. And what he absolutely did was make the proletariat at the time, the stuck-up bourgeois people, were already scared of the peasantry rising and causing a revolution. And what he basically more or less did was give them the importance that they were scared that and didn't want them to have. So he did something really like traumatizing for them at the time, which was shove it in their face and be like, yeah, these poor people that you're so scared about are powerful, and their stories are worth telling, and they are dignified. Like, he did all of this from the seat of power itself, which was Paris. And again, the awesome stuff is that he, a lot of people said that he doesn't seem like he had any skill, because as you saw with those people, they were really they were close up to you, and they'd criticize him like, oh, he doesn't know how to do people in the background and give his paintings depth, and he brings them right close up to you. And he even used to do stuff like copy photographs, copy posters, copy Japanese print paintings, but he developed those techniques by himself because he wanted to give a message to people about how the people were almost spilling out of the painting like a Baroque painting, where you almost feel like you can touch them, they're so real. And that was again part of his propaganda, almost, to scare the people in the bourgeoisie of these peasants that are like so much bigger and better than they hold them to be. And you know, he was rejected a whole bunch of times because of the fact that he was so revolutionary. He like he exhibited a total of 25 times before he was only accepted 3 times. So he got actually rejected from 22 exhibitions. Imagine applying to 22 exhibitions and having your work chucked out. 22 competitions, even though you have that much talent. So, you know, if you're an artist like that, just keep going, because the reason why he was chucked out was because he was doing stuff that nobody else wanted him to do. But in the end, he actually got his foot in the door because he was saying and doing something relevant, and he believed in his dream. But yeah, at that time, his father supported him and kept, even though he depicted himself as this suffering, tragic artist, he really wasn't. He had a social life, and he had friends like Charles Baudelaire and Pierre Proudhon and all these anarchists and philosophers and writers that he used to meet on a regular basis. And the place where they used to meet eventually became called the Temple of Realism. So, you know, he had his team with him, again, like attraction marketing group marketing. He basically, the reason why I keep comparing him to people like that are also in the marketing realm and not just the arts is because marketing is also the art of becoming independent. And like, you know, you have your teams in marketing where you're with a group of people and you meet them regularly and you share a similar political ideology, especially if you're in something like Empower with Dave Wood, you'd realize that he's also very anti-establishment. And, you know, it's like a hippie from one of those rallies in St. Paul's escaped with the mind of Gustave Courbet and started to just do social experiments that would allow normal poor people, like with tattoos and drug problems and whatever, to become extremely rich without even having to have a professional job. And that's him giving his 2 fingers to the system. I mean, look, Courbet did it to make himself rich and make an idea popular, because at the time that was all you could do, make an idea popular and make people dream the dream that it's possible. But now we're at a point where people have dreamt the dream for about 200 years. That's when he was alive. And now people are able to have the life as well. They're able to have the social mobility by having the money. And more information about that is in the box below. You know, because artists, basically, the old model is that you paint, you work for yourself, you make yourself rich. But even if you have independent ideas like Gustave Courbet, that everybody should follow their dreams and be independent, and the poor person's voice is as prominent and as worthy as that of the rich. You know, you can say all these pretty ideas, but it doesn't make anybody's life better. It just makes them feel more important, but they're still like doing really awful work or whatever. Like, the way to bring them out of that situation is to actually provide a system that they can use to make themselves, to make yourself and other people around you live a better life as a result of your work. That's what a real freedom artist is about. And that would be Gustave Courbet's mission in modern life, I'd say. If he knew that something like that was possible, he'd definitely be doing it. So yeah, like, he was a very, really politicized figure. And, you know, they were all for making society more egalitarian. He was really noisy, opinionated, socialist, anti-institutional, and always looking for nature and truth. And again, if you know Dave Wood, you know that he's always like this hippie figure living in the mountains of Costa Rica, and he's doing it again as an American from the seat of power of capitalism himself. He's trying to dismantle the system, but he's very much somebody like hippie living in the woods kind of character, like Courbet, who kept going out of Paris and trying to bring the rural into the city. And, you know, he's trying to make himself this self-made image, trying to mold his identity from scratch. And the work that kind of sent him like flying into fame was, again, like one more painting I'll show you of the kind of stuff that he did, just to make you realize how different he was as an artist and why he had so much acclaim. This is a painting called Stonebreakers, and it was based on a real encounter he had with 2 stonebreakers. This is one of the toughest jobs you could do at the time. And, you know, it shows, it's not glorifying labor at all like the Romantics were known to do. See, at the time that Courbet painted this, and which was his most famous painting that propelled him into fame. other artists like Eugene Delacroix were painting things like this, which is liberty guiding the people. You know, this is a very famous 1800s romantic realism sort of painting, but Courbet rejected this as realism because you'd never see a scene like this happening in real life, you know, where this was just idealism, and it was making people fall asleep. Whereas this was something that you would experience in real life. This is a bunch of peasants just relaxing after dinner, with a bit of entertainment. A scene that people in Paris at the time just weren't used to seeing. And again, this is something similar, just people working and the real rugged reality of what that work entails. Like a boy, you know, breaking his back, carrying all these stones, and doing this labor until he becomes like his father, the old man, stooped over, literally, a bit breaking his back over this work. And there's no, like, you know, rugged body, no over-tanned masculine form, nothing to glorify this work. It's the cruel reality of labor for the working class. And that's what Courbet was drawing the attention to, that, you know, this is the way that these people live their lives, and it's not pleasant, and there's nothing romantic about it. But he was the first of the few to actually call that to attention. And that's why people loved him so much, even though he did it in a style that was like very cartoony, and you know, his influence was very much from popular art. So you'd see these like dogs all over his work, these little dogs that appear very regularly, and those are the ones that those cute little dogs were actually the things that ticked off the people at the salon the most, where he would try to sell his paintings, because like this one here, this one between Courbet and the artist, this little dog right in center stage, and again here right at the front of the painting. You know, why did he put these dogs everywhere, and especially in a place where you could see, sorry, that's Delacroix, you could see them again here right at the foreground. The reason he did that was because these dogs made very common appearances in that form on matchstick boxes and posters and advertising. They're very popular emblems in places which basically where art appeared for the everyday common man. And to have that in a bourgeois salon was like shocking for people. It really upset them a lot. So that's why he was awesome for rustling a few feathers, and they loved him for it. But you know, he carved his persona and carried on carving his persona with the political subtext. You know, they even tried to award him an OBE kind of thing, like Benjamin Zephaniah, for example, is famously known for rejecting an OBE. He's a British poet that's really anti-establishment too, while Courbet also rejected the Legion of Honor from the French government in the 1800s, and he was actually exiled because he did that. And they like heaped all kinds of fines and stuff on him for being so stuck up, similar to what they did to Michelangelo, and he had to run away to Switzerland to live in exile. Courbet, not Michelangelo. But he died there at 58, very young. Died more or less alone. But the point is that he really believed in his principles right to the end, and he kept very real to them, and he had the strength to be independent. And he died rich, like he was filthy rich. He got the money he had to get at the end, and he had a lot of fun doing it. The awesome thing was he got his ideas across, and you know, he really was all about people fault him and say, you know, that famous painting that I showed you of the dinner at Ornans, where there's those guys at dinner party after dinner listening to the violin. He painted that in 1848 when the actual revolution happened, the 10-week revolution. And although a lot of his friends went to prison at that time for protesting and stuff, Courbet focused that time in doing his paintings. And people criticize him like, oh, was he really revolutionary, or was he just about becoming a better artist? But like, hello, if your fight is in the art or in your work, then of course you'd focus on the work, because you're not just going to go to prison. What are you going to do in prison? Just pretend and show to everybody that, look, I believe in this, I'm in prison. Like, he actually buckled down and knocked a harder blow, because that was the work that actually opened the floodgates for him to be accepted continuously in the salon and have work that challenged the bourgeois from from where it hurt, constantly being propelled into the public eye, which led to the point where he got awarded this massive award from the government, and then he could reject it and prove to people that, look, you don't need to care at all about the powers that be, because you are the one that's in charge of your life. So he was actually aiming at a way longer trajectory, and just because he didn't go to protests and get chucked into prison doesn't mean he didn't actually care about the struggle that he was fighting for. His struggle, it was just that he brought it into a different manifestation through his work. And you can actually do that. You can be a political artist, an independent artist that doesn't just go out protesting all day. Was it Lupe Fiasco that said, unnecessariness manifested is to protest just to get arrested, or something like that. But the idea being, you don't actually just have to hit the target that you're aiming at just by doing the same thing everybody else is doing. You can change the system financially, you can change the system artistically, you can change the system in your writing. There are plenty of examples of that. And yeah, to get more updates about this kind of stuff, join my list in the link below. In the text below, you'll find out information about it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Assalamu alaikum.